to the Wild Child Adventures podcast. Today we have Ian Ferrier, who's a rock climber and mountain bike tour guide and a very experienced hiker by the seams of it. So you've helped with sections of the Tasmanian Abels book, which is pretty cool, I reckon. How are you today, Ian?
Excellent, going very well.
How was your day? What did you get up to today?
I was mountain biking today with a school outdoor ed program. I've been doing that the last couple of weeks with St Pat's College, who I do a lot of work with, and it's about the third session I had with this group, so we got to do a few more interesting trails.
That's so cool. So where did you go?
We were at Cape Reed here in Launceston today.
Yep. That's a perfect place to teach people, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, ideal.
Yeah. And so with that school group, do you go through the levels with them?
We do, yeah. We start off just with basic skills at the actual school to make sure everyone's across the skills required. Inevitably, in this day and age, we've obviously got some kids who are very, very capable, who ride on the weekend and do all their own thing, and then right through to some who don't do a lot at all. So we're trying to cater for everyone.
And how do you manage that if there's a massive skills gap? Do you have someone that helps you?
Yeah, we have usually a couple of staff that come along as well, and then we try and get the skills up while we're at the school first before we actually even go out onto the trails, and then try and close the gap a little bit. But usually there's a few people we've sort of got to put the rein on a bit.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun. I think I would rather do that than spend a day on the computer for sure.
Yeah, can't complain. I get to go to all sorts of different places. On Saturday, I was up on Ben Lomond and it was snowing on top, and we had people riding down Jacob's Ladder and off into the bush down the bottom, which is something we do regularly. But they were mostly from the UK, that group, and they were ready to cope with some bad weather.
Wow. It would have been worth it to see the snow, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. It was, didn't get a lot of views, but added to the experience.
Yeah. Oh, true. Was it cloudy? Like visibility was low?
Yeah, quite low, unfortunately. Yeah, didn't get the usual nice views down Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah. I'm yet to go to Ben Lomond and Jacob's Ladder. It's definitely on the list.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those iconic places for sure.
So I'd love to kick us off with you explaining a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, currently I run my own business, basically freelance guiding, and probably do 70% rock climbing guiding, 40% or 30% mountain bike guiding, and so all around Tasmania, lots of different places. The mountain biking used to be a lot bigger, particularly when Derby first opened and places like that. So there was no real infrastructure out there. So it had a lot more demand for people wanting to be taken out there and showed around. But whereas now people can do their own thing a lot more easily. So with mountain biking, we're more just concentrating on more bespoke tours, and the main one we do is the Ben Lomond descent, which I discussed. And then for rock climbing, everything from introductory stuff in the Cataract Gorge in Launceston and at Freycinet. That's mostly what I do, but I've got a couple of other fellas who work for me who are way more capable climbers than I am, so they do everything up to guiding on the totem pole down the Tasman Peninsula, which is a bit of a bucket list climb for a lot of people.
Yeah, I have your picture up. I think that's you on the totem pole, I'm assuming, on your website.
Oh, it's not me, no. Too hard for me, the totem pole, but yeah.
Yes, it'll be. Yeah. Is it Cape Raoul?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, yep. Yeah, Sam and I went and ran it to Cape Raoul about a month ago. It was beautiful.
There's Cape Raoul, and Cape Raoul is the one with the smaller pillars, and then Cape Hoy is where the totem pole is out on the end, where people go out when they do the Three Capes walk. Yeah.
Yes, yep.
The Cape Raoul. We take people out there too.
Yep. And I've also seen on the news that's also where people get stuck sometimes.
Yes. It is an iconic climb. It's like a 70-metre sea pillar. So you've got to rappel off the mainland and do the climb, and then do what's called a Tyrolean traverse back to the mainland at the end.
Wow.
And so there's plenty of people who are probably capable of climbing it, but maybe don't have the technical ability to get back, and so then they sometimes have issues.
Yep. And potentially don't check the weather properly, maybe.
Yeah, a few things like that. Yeah, that's been the side of a few rescues and dramas.
Yeah, amazing. So would it be right if I called you a full-time adventurer?
Yeah, probably. I've sort of tailored my life around all the things I like to do, so yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot of fun. And I would love to ask, what is your favourite thing about what you do for work?
I think probably mostly just seeing people enjoying the areas that I like myself, and so taking people to places that I really enjoy and seeing them getting a lot out of it.
Mm.
I probably spend most of my time at Freycinet, where we're climbing by the sea, and get a lot of international guests there, particularly from places like Singapore and Thailand, and where they've never experienced anything like that. They may be really good climbers who've climbed indoors a lot but never really been outside, and they end up down
Ah,
there. There's no one else around, spectacular cliffs, the waves are crashing down the bottom while we're climbing. We often see whales passing by, particularly this time of year and in November, so yeah, it's pretty special out there.
that's so cool. So when I'm thinking about Freycinet, is it what's the mountain there? Is it? I can't remember the name.
There's Mount Amos, but we're right out on the east
Amos.
coast. Yeah, we're right out. We normally go climbing right out on the east coast at a place called Whitewater Wall, and
Yep.
Lassie's Wall out towards Cape Tourville is the area out there.
Yep. And is there all different areas for different abilities?
There is, yes. So the bulk of the people I'm taking are, it's more at the introductory level,
Yep.
but there's everything from some of the hardest climbs in Tassie in certain areas at Freycinet.
Amazing. It is beautiful there. And I can see why people come from all over the world to experience it.
Yeah, for sure.
So where did these adventurous sports or activities start for you?
I probably got my start. I was always interested in the outdoors. We've got a shack up the Central Highlands, going up there since I was a kid, but then got an interest in bushwalking. So I joined the Launceston Walking Club when I was 15, and that enabled me to go out on walks with more experienced people. Started doing a lot of bushwalking in my teenage years. Got introduced into what's called peak bagging, which is before the Abels were produced, the Hobart Walking Club had a list of all the mountains in Tasmania and gave them a certain number of points based on how difficult they were to get to, the highest being 10 for Federation Peak. And so, yeah, I used to get into going to all these random places just to try and get points, and often you'd be climbing these peaks, even though you couldn't see anything when you got to the top and things like that, just because you got the 2 points or whatever it was for some random mountain that you were going to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did a lot of bushwalking in my teenage years into lots of different places. In that time, yeah, I met Bill Wilkinson. He was in the walking club at the time. He ended up coming up with the idea for the Abels, and it was later on when yeah, he approached me to be involved in writing some of the descriptions of the peaks that I'd been to. Also during that time, just randomly someone said, "Oh, let's go and do the overland track. We'll do it as a day trip." So I'd never done the overland track, so we ran the overland track, the full 85 k's of it.
You ran it.
Yeah, yeah, sort of
Yeah,
trail running thing
wow.
before trail running was really a thing.
It's a bit popular now, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot more popular now. But again, yeah, there's a race, but we didn't do the race. We just did it. And then the people I went with two other fellas. They decided they wanted to catch the boat, but I kept going and went down the lake. Did the full 85 k's. Ended up being a guide on the overland track with Cradle Mountain Huts for about 5 years, from the late 80s to the early 90s. So I did the overland track about 50 times
Wow.
with lots of different people, again, in all sorts of different weather conditions and things like that. So
Mm,
yeah, that sort of what got me into the adventure tourism side.
I bet. So for our listeners, I suppose we should explain what an able is.
Yeah, so I'll have to remember the definition myself. So it's I think it's 1,250 metres high, but it has to have at least 150 metres of drop all around it to qualify. So it is actually
Okay.
a genuine peak.
Yep.
And yeah, so it was based on, in Scotland, there's the Munros. So Bill had been in Scotland and saw they had the Munros, which is a similar sort of concept. So he thought, oh, well, here in Tassie, we should have something similar.
Yeah.
And so he explored all the maps and categorised all the different mountains and created the list. And then each mountain got an essay written about it, which went into the initial Labels book, Volume 1. And now there's, yeah, multiple volumes. Volume 2 came out, which is there are more remote ones. And then since then, it's got quite the cult following.
And how many Abels are there? Because I have heard, I thought it was like 360 something. Is that?
I think it's 258. Again, I'm a bit vague on the total statistic, sorry, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's all right.
there's a few people who've done them all. in that time. And some of them, and since the concept was discovered, some people actually had found some other ones or discovered some other ones that have since been
Oh,
added in.
wow. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's amazing. How did it come about that you helped Bill with this section of the book? So you said what areas was it again? Oh,
Uh,
Pelion and Duquesne Ranges?
yes, yeah. So that was to write the essays. You had to need to have been to all the places, obviously, so you could describe what it was like. And it wasn't designed as a guidebook. It's not like a step by step. This is where you go. It was kept relatively vague, so people could work out their own way of how to get to these places, but a little bit of a rough guide on how to get there. And so some of them were, because they were in part of this list, hadn't been part of other places where people went. So there was a couple that I had to go to which were new. One of them, which is Mount Proteus, which is right out of Pine Forest Moor out near Pelion West. So I went out there myself one time when I was out there with a group doing the Pelion circuit and climbed that and wrote up about that. But it was really mostly about writing about areas that I'd been to. So
So what was involved in I guess, what are you looking for when you're sort of going to the area to then write that essay to put in the book?
there was a combination of a rough indication of how to get there, what tracks to follow, but also more descriptive of what it was like being out there, what the views were like, and what you could see from the particular peak, that sort of thing. So
Mm.
so there was some of them a little bit more remote. The one I mentioned to you earlier today about we went to Mount Nereus, which is we were camping up on the Labyrinth for about 3 or 4 days, which is up behind Pine Valley, and climbing all the peaks around there. And Bill and I decided to go out to Mount Nereus, which is probably one of the more remote ones you can get to, and we decided to try and do it as a day trip from the Labyrinth, in which case you go over Walled Mountain, you go around Max Mountain, then to Mount Nereus, which has got a
Wow.
fair bit of scrub bashing. We got out there, it was a pretty nice day, got to the top, got great views back towards the Labyrinth, going pretty well. And I think it was a bit after lunch we started heading back. And as we were coming back, we'd see out to the west there was a big storm coming. But we thought, no, that's all right. We're still on track to get back. But part way back, Bill started getting cramp.
Oh no.
We hadn't found a lot of water on the way out, but we kept persevering. Got back up onto the side of Wall Mountain about the time that this storm came in, which initially was a bit of rain, but then it turned to snow, and then the clouds came down, and we only had to get back to a particular high point on Walled Mountain, and we'd be able to find the track that take us back down to the Labyrinth where our camp was. But anyway, the weather got worse. It started snowing more, so we thought, okay, we better actually get our compass out. This is the day before GPSs or anything like that. So
Yeah.
we thought we'll navigate by compass, find the track, and then we'll walk down. So we'll get the compass out. With a compass, you take a bearing and you face it off and look into the distance and see something to walk to, and you walk to that. And then you take another one and you walk to the next one. We did that for a while. Next thing we came across our own footprints.
Oh no.
So we'd been walking around in circles because at the
Oh
same
no.
time it was snowing and this storm was coming in, there was thunder and lightning, and we think the lightning was affecting the compass. Yeah, things weren't going particularly good, and so at that point it was not quite getting dark. It was in the middle of summer, so long daylight hours, but it was obvious we weren't going to find the track, and we thought, well, we're not going to spend the night on the top of the mountain in the snow, so we just went down the nearest slope we could find until we got down into the forest on the side of the mountain, and then spent the night in the rain and in a bit of sleety snow, tried to get a fire going. This was again before fires were banned in national parks.
Yeah.
But then the fire got put out by the rain, and so we got under a log and sort of tried to be as comfortable as we could during the night under a log. And
Oh.
then the next morning it cleared enough for us to get a bearing across to the Acropolis, realised where we were, and made our way back to our camp, in which the two other people we were out there with were out looking for us at that stage, and they
Mm.
eventually came back and all was good, and we stayed up for another 3 or 4 days doing other peaks. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. Did you get any sleep that night?
Oh, not really. No, no.
No. Probably leeches attacking you as well.
I think it was a bit too cold for the leeches, but yeah,
Uh,
just a bit miserable. But anyway,
yeah.
classic case of me always having the right. Yeah, we had thermals and warm gear and wet weather gear
Mm.
and everything like that, so we were okay to spend the night out. A classic case of having the right equipment.
Yeah, yeah. And so how many hours were you sort of hiking for on that day, the day before you got back?
If we pulled it off, I think we probably would have got back to camp in about 13 hours or something like that. The actual recommendation now is that you don't do it as a day trip from the Labyrinth. You camp on the far side of of Walled Mountain, then do a day trip from there. I've since bumped into people who've been out there and they've been not overly complimentary about my description of the times, but what happens in 30 years is the scrub grows up and it gets harder. So it is actually harder to get out there now. So the times that estimate that we put into the Abels initially are a bit off now for sure.
Well, I was just wondering that whether the tracks have gotten better or worse
Yeah, well, that
because more
place out there,
people.
there's no tracks out there at all. So in that particular part, so the scrub's grown back and it's definitely worse.
Yeah. And so when you knew that you'd had to stay the night and you weren't going to be able to make it back to camp, what's going through your mind when there's something like that is happening?
Well, we're certainly concerned about what our friends were thinking because there was two other friends back at the main camp who were waiting for us. But again, that was in the days before PLBs, before satellite phones, nothing like that. No one was calling for rescues or anything like that. So yeah, we just had to deal
Yeah.
with what we had to deal with.
Yeah. And what sort of skills would you sort of say that you had to tap into that night?
Oh, really just, yeah, our knowledge about how to stay relatively dry and warm in pretty hostile conditions, which we succeeded in doing. That's why we got the fire going, but unfortunately the rain got quite heavy for a while and put the fire out. But yeah, we weren't in any real danger.
Yep.
Realising as soon as because again at that time of year the night's pretty short too. So as soon as it started getting light again, and the weather the next day improved, we were starting to get better.
Yep. Yeah, I guess it just shows being prepared is so important. I mean, we see all the people on the news getting stuck out there or getting lost and missing. Yeah, it's just shows the importance of being prepared. And I think that's why I haven't gone on too difficult hikes yet because I feel like I haven't learnt those skills yet and I don't feel experienced enough yet to potentially go overnight.
Yeah, well, it's probably that's probably one thing that with all the technology we have now available, people probably relied on it too much. I think there was someone recently who had to get rescued at Cradle Mountain because their iPhone went flat, so the map they were following no longer worked. So you probably need to rely a little bit more on, even just a normal map rather than relying on technology.
Mm. And that's a good point. What would you say some of the things the average person, if they're going on a really long hike, or even actually you make a good point about Cradle Mountain and not getting too complacent. What would you say some things that an average person should have with them for
Well,
hiking?
well, they still need to have, with Tasmania, you need to be prepared for any sort of condition at any time of year. It can snow in the middle of summer, so you still need to be prepared with good warm clothing, thermal underwear, weather gear, good amount of food and things like that. So worst case scenario, you could potentially spend a night out. But the trouble is people, as
Mm.
soon as they get a little bit out of their comfort zone, they pull the pin and want someone to come and rescue them, which is a bit
Mm.
all too easy these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And how would you describe, have you done, no, you would have done a lot of hiking in the rest of Tasmania, I'm assuming.
Yeah, all over Tassie. I haven't done all the Abels, but the ones I've got left to do now are the obscure ones, the hard to get ones. So I may have a go at trying to get them, but yeah, I don't really like scrub bashing anymore. So if I can avoid doing
Yeah.
that, I will.
So those obscure ones are a lot harder to get to, are they?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably got 2 or 3 day walk just to get to some of the really remote ones and in areas where there's no tracks and yeah, you got to be pretty keen
Yeah.
to do them all.
Yep. Next on my list is Frenchman's Cap. I would like to do that with some friends. It looks absolutely beautiful. So how would you describe the hiking in Tasmania compared to other parts of the world?
Well, it's certainly the main thing we have to deal with here is that it's a lot damper. We don't necessarily get super cold, but because it is wet and cold, it can be quite dangerous. I think that's the thing to be aware of. I've been in other places where the temperature's been a lot less, but
Mm.
it's a dry cold, so it's not as bad. So I think that's something that maybe catches people out here. Yeah, certainly a lot pretty rugged terrain and the scrub's pretty thick in some places. But as far as scenery goes, it's as good as anything here, really.
No, I agree. I've done a bit of hiking in Tassie, but I've got a lot more to do. And a lot of people ask me, why'd you move to Tassie? I'm like, just come and see. You'll see how beautiful it is here.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of diversity.
And so I'd love to ask you, what's a special memory of hiking that you've done around the world that you can remember?
I suppose hiking and I suppose combining hiking with climbing,
Mm.
probably the most spectacular peak I climbed was Denali in Alaska, so the highest mountain in North America. So that was utilising ski touring skills, which I picked up in Tasmania. We used to do a lot of cross-country skiing in places like the Walls of Jerusalem and up at Cradle Mountain and places like that. Unfortunately, with the snow season these days, it's not so easy to do that.
Not as good. The
We don't
snow's
get as
not as
much
good.
snow, yeah, unfortunately.
Yep.
But yeah, climbing Denali, we were basically living on snow for 3 weeks. We flew in a plane which had skis on rather than wheels, landed on the glacier, and then we towed sleds using skis up the mountain till we got as far up as we could go, and then swapped to the crampons and ice axes to do the final bit to get to the summit, which is 6,200 metres high, and it was about minus 25 when we got to the top.
Wow. And how long did that take you?
So the trip all round return was 3 weeks.
Hmm. And you said you took the sleds to a certain point and then you hiked and climbed the rest. How long?
Yeah. So because you're dealing with altitude, you move up in stages.
Hmm.
Once we got up to what's called the 14,000 foot camp, that took us about a week to get to there. We took a load up to the 17,000 foot camp, left it, came back down, waited a few days while the weather wasn't so good, and then went up again and spent a night at the 17,000 foot camp, and then the next day went to the summit. And
Wow.
we were lucky enough to be the first to the summit. For no one had been up there for a week because the weather had been so bad.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that meant we were the first people to actually have to plug through the snow and create the trail through the snow, which has made it a
Yep.
bit harder work. But
Yeah,
because we went,
wow.
it meant that we got up and down before the next bad weather came in.
Yep. Amazing. What's it like, I guess, a day on the side of the mountain when you're sleeping out, camping out and hiking?
So yeah, it's all about dealing with the conditions. So obviously below zero, everything is frozen. So yeah, the day is spent really doing things like melting snow for water.
Mm.
And so you've got to spend quite a bit of time getting enough water ready for the day of climbing. Obviously cooking when you get the chance at the end of the day, all that sort of stuff. But at that time of year, it was in late May, early June. There's 24-hour daylight. So
Oh, wow.
which meant that lower down on the mountain we were actually climbing in essentially night time because it was colder, so everything was frozen up more, so less chance of falling in
Hmm.
crevasses and stuff like that. So yeah.
And when you're melting the snow, do you, I don't know, do you light the fires on the side of the mountain, or do you have something else that melts the snow?
We had a stove which ran on shellite, which is like a refined petrol really. Um,
Uh-huh.
so a pressure stove. So a fuel bottle that you has a pump on the side of it. You pump the pressure up into it, and then the stove vaporizes the fuel, and then that's enough to melt the water. But the further up you went, the less effective that stove was because,
Mm.
again, because of the altitude, less oxygen, the stove was slower and slower. But it was called an MSR International, which is one of the, no, sorry, XGK, which is one of the pure, all it was good for was melting snow and making things hot. You wouldn't want to cook on it because it was either on or off.
Yeah, okay,
Mm.
interesting. And are you carrying all of your cooking gear and camping gear and everything up the mountain yourselves?
Yep, yep. So we had
Yeah.
the fuel as well, obviously for the stove, all your food for the 3 weeks. Obviously all your equipment, skis, crampons, ice axes, the whole shebang. So there's a fair weight initially, but the further up we got, the less there was. Because you don't have to carry as
Mm.
much the further up you go.
Yeah, yep, less food. Did you have any tricky moments while on Denali?
We didn't actually. We were pretty. There was just myself and my friend Ross. I did a lot of rock climbing with Ross here in Tassie first before we went, and then we went to New Zealand before that. So we got along well in those sort of conditions, and just stuck to our plan. There were people around us doing all sorts of random things which didn't necessarily pay off. People take various drugs to improve their performance at altitude. That then
Okay.
backfires on them when they run out of drugs when they've already got themselves up high. But we benefited a bit because there was a couple of parties who took a whole heap of food up to the highest camp and then decided they weren't up to going any further and came back down, and they said, oh, well, there's a cache of food up there, go for it. We utilised that. They were actually people who owned an outdoor shop in Seattle and had all the latest freeze-dried food, so we managed to raid that when we got up there. But
Bonus.
yeah, so for us, it was, we didn't have any issues at all. Went very smooth. It's not it can be a dangerous place. There's people died a couple of weeks before we were there, falling off, and a guide fell in a crevasse and died the week before we got there.
Wow.
It's yeah.
What did it look like preparing for that trip?
Well, it was so it's still a fair bit of information about all the stuff you needed, but what we'd done previously was a good precursor to it. You never really know how you're going to perform at altitude. Yeah, luckily it slows you right down, but we didn't have any real issues.
Yep. So I've been to Denali. I didn't climb it,
Oh, good.
but I love Alaska. It's absolutely beautiful. And I took a plane flight. I think they had the skis that could land, or the plane that could land on the glaciers.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, took a plane ride around Denali, and they said we were really lucky because obviously it's such a big mountain, it creates its own weather system like a lot of mountains. But it was completely clear. And they said it's very rarely kind of like that. So yeah, we got really, really lucky and got to land on the glacier, and yeah, it was incredible. Couldn't even imagine how amazing it would have been staying there for 3 weeks.
So you would have flown out of Talkeetna, does that sound familiar, the name of the place?
I honestly
A bit
can't
north of
remember.
Anchorage?
Yeah, yep, I went
Mm.
to Anchorage, so it would
Mm.
have been near Anchorage, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went into the national park hiking a fair bit and then also caught the plane ride. Yeah, I'd love to go back. It was beautiful.
Yeah, certainly incredibly wild place, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so you said that you worked as a tour guide doing the overland track.
Yes, yep. Yeah, so I started
So,
that in 80, I think it was. So that was with Cradle Mountain Huts. It was their first full season. And I had to badger them a bit to even get the chance to go on any of their trips. So I went as a junior guide first. And I think I might have been 19 or at that point. And I think they were a little bit reluctant to employ someone so young, which is fair enough. These days they employ a lot of younger people. But yeah, it then became apparent that the bushwalking experience I had at that point was a bit more than what some of the other people had who were working out there. So the next season they invited me back to be a senior guide, and then ended up doing some of their guide training and things like that. And
yeah.
by the time I finished up in at the end, I was more doing occasional guiding, but more helping out with the provisioning. So helicopter provisioning, they supply the huts with their food twice a year, and
Yep.
so organising all the logistics for that and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. So you must have loved it doing it more than 50 times.
Oh yeah, I'd happily go and do it again. It's a fantastic walk, and it was never
Yeah.
the same because the weather's always different, or different time of the
Mm.
year and different groups, and yeah, got to meet a lot of amazing people.
That's also on my bucket list. Not sure when we're booking that in yet, but my friend also wants to run it. I'm like, why not?
Yeah, well that's it. It's yep, not a bad thing to run. Again, you don't necessarily run the whole thing, but you can power walk a lot of it. And yeah, I think the first time we did it, it took us about 14 hours, and I think I did it the second time was just under 13 hours. But again,
The
that
whole
was not
thing.
that
Oh,
yeah,
running?
running slash power walking. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Yep. I mean, they say like ultra marathon runners, the perception is that they run the whole time, but that is not true.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Bit
Although
of walking, bit of jogging.
the people who've got the record, I think the record is like 7 hours something or other. They would be running the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Serious competitors, yep. And I also read that you have done or competed the 5-day Mark Webber challenge, and I was wondering what that is.
Yeah, so Mark Webber is a Formula One racing car driver, or was. So he had his own 5-day adventure race here in Tasmania.
Oh, wow.
And so that used to be a combination of mountain running, kayaking, mountain biking, ropes course. I think that was mostly it. And so initially, Bob McMahon used to run a lot of the rock climbing in Tasmania, and he had the job of doing the rigging for the ropes courses and things like that as part of the Mark Webber Challenge. So I used to work with Bob setting those up. So we were doing things like zip lines across the Cataract Gorge. We made them climb out underneath the Tahoon Airwalk and then abseil off the end of it. We made them abseil 80 metres off Mount Amos. This is over various different years that they did that. Oh, abseiled
Wow.
off the casino in Hobart. Lots of
The
different things like
casino.
that. So I was doing that, and at the same time, I was also recreationally doing some of the adventure races in Tassie, like the Freycinet Challenge, which is mountain biking and road biking, running and kayaking.
Hmm.
And so Tim Saul, who organised the Weber Challenge and the Freycinet Challenge and things like that, who I knew through both of those, said, oh, we need someone to come along and be a bit of a minder for some of the celebrities who we've got who're competing in the Weber Challenge. So we need you to go with a footballer.
Uh-huh.
So that fellow called Lee Colbert, who's a lovely fellow, he used to play for North Melbourne and Geelong. So the first couple of days, I said, okay, you can come and be a competitor now rather than being a behind-the-scenes person. And so, yeah, we did the first day. I was up at Cradle Mountain. We ran to the top of Cradle Mountain, kayaked on Dove Lake, mountain biked around Cradle Mountain, and then it went on to round Mount Roland, up and down Mount Roland. Then we went down to Port Arthur, running, mountain biking, kayaking down there. And that was the year that Mark Webber, unfortunately, had an altercation with a car and got cleaned up by a car and broke his leg. So that put a few dramas into his Formula One racing career. And so, yeah, the first 2 days I was with Lee Colbert, and then I teamed up with Emma White now, who was Tassie's fastest female adventure racer. She was with Mark Webber for the first couple of days, and then he teamed up with someone else. And so Emma and I, we were the two support people. We ended up doing the rest of the race together, which worked out really well. And the last day was taking the Pennycott boat from Port Arthur to Hobart, and then got driven to the top of Mount Wellington, ran down to the Springs, then mountain biked all the way down into Hobart, and did a running leg around Hobart and finished up down there. But yeah, it was certainly quite a specky race. And every night they'd give you a fancy fine dining meal somewhere.
Yeah, wow. That's a different experience.
It had its own catering team and all that sort of stuff.
So he doesn't run it anymore?
No, it ran had a year off after when he broke his leg, and then it ran for a couple of years more, where I got back into more just doing behind the scenes stuff then. But then, it hasn't run since, unfortunately.
But I have heard about the Freycinet Challenge. I've actually got a friend trying to convince me to do it, but she's like, you don't. I'm like, oh, I need to buy a kayak or a boat.
Oh yes, yeah.
She's like, no, you can just hire them. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a good way of getting into it. You can do it in teams, or I initially started doing it as a team. I started as a team of 4, then a team of 2, and then ended up doing all solo. Trouble with when you're doing it solo, you spend all your spare time training all these different disciplines.
Yeah, I have done adventure races before, and I didn't have a boat. I just borrowed one on the day, and I just winged it. And I remember the first time I raced it, I think it was a 10K paddle, and I'd never used a kayak with the rudders, like the foot plates.
Oh yes. Yeah.
And I spent pretty much the whole race zigzagging all over the river.
Oh yes.
So
yeah.
that was pretty funny. But the next time around, I borrowed another boat, and that was in the ocean, and I actually did pretty well. I felt really strong. So I feel like there's obviously technique to it, but I feel like you can wing it a little bit as long as you've got a strong core and upper back, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, and a lot of there's sit-on skis and things now, which are a bit more stable and tend to track a bit better, so stay a bit straighter.
Amazing. Obviously, as we've spoken about, you look like a very experienced rock climber. Have you traveled the world doing rock climbing as well?
Yes, so that trip to Alaska, we were in Canada first doing rock climbing at a place called Squamish, which is near Whistler, so near Vancouver. So yeah, I was lucky enough to go there initially with Ross, who I went to Alaska with, and then after the Alaskan trip, came back and met up with a fellow called Simon Parsons, he's a pretty famous Tasmanian climber. He's one of the best climbers in Australia in his day. And so I luckily got to climb on Squamish with him. Did a big climb right up the middle, 450 metres high, which if I'd been there with someone else of my ability, we wouldn't have been able to do it. But because I was there with Simon, I got to do a lot harder thing than I would normally would.
Why is that? Is it because he's supporting you or encouraging you?
Yeah, well, he was the one who was leading the harder pitches, basically. So I can lead some of them, but he had to lead the real hard ones.
And so just for a complete noob that knows nothing about leading pitches, what does that mean?
So when you're starting at the bottom of a big cliff and going up, someone has got to go up first and place the protection. Yep. So if you fall off, you fall twice the distance you are above your last bit of protection.
Uh-huh.
So someone's got to go up first, and then the second person coming up has a rope above them the whole time. Yep. The person leading doesn't have the rope above them. They've actually got to go up and anchor the rope as they go. They're still doing what's called free climbing, in that the rope's only there to catch them if they fall off. Mm-hmm. They're not relying on the rope to get up. Yeah, so the person who goes first on the harder climbs has to be the better climber.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I've seen some videos of people sort of, I guess, clipping,
Yeah, that's right.
making the way,
Yep.
and then them falling, and oof, it looks like it hurts when it goes wrong.
Yeah, so it's that area there is what's called traditional climbing, where you're actually placing your own protection in cracks and things like that. Whereas then there's
Hmm.
sport climbing where there's bolts already in the wall that you
Okay.
clip into as you go, which is a little bit more user friendly.
Yeah. And then I suppose there's free climbing. Is it free climbing?
Yeah, free solo, which is
Free solo, yeah.
we're,
Crazy.
yeah, different league again.
Yeah. And so where did it all start for you with rock climbing? What age were you?
Again, it was around the late teens, I think. Again, people I'd met through the walking club had done some rock climbing. And yes, I went with them a couple of times, and then met up with Ross, the fellow I went with to Canada with and Alaska with. He had done a lot more rock climbing. He was probably 15 years older than me or so, I think, probably at that point, maybe nearly 20 years older. So quite experienced rock climbing, but he was at the point where he was happy to sort of pass on some of his knowledge, and I ended up getting to the point where I was doing a lot of the leading when I went out with Ross. So that worked out well.
Yep.
And then, yeah, from there, started meeting up with a lot of other people um, and doing more climbing, mostly in Tassie initially. Yeah.
That's so cool that you found a community that you could tap into that could support you in your journey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's certainly in a lot of these outdoor sports, you end up meeting up with people who are way better than you, which is a good way
Mm,
to learn. But I tended to be a little bit of a multidisciplinary person at various stages. I've tried all sorts of things from skiing and climbing and whitewater kayaking and all that sort
mm,
of thing. But so you end up spending time with people who do that one particular sport all the time.
yep.
So it forces you to get a bit better, at least to try and keep up with them.
Mm. And what are the main things that you're learning or someone is learning when they're starting rock climbing?
The big thing, well, initially when I started climbing, really there was only traditional climbing, which is where you're placing your own equipment. So it was learning how to place that, how to place it so that if you did fall off, it was going to catch you. Learning how to set up good anchors and belay properly and look after each other. So I've always been a fairly conservative climber though. So yeah, tried to not get into too nasty situations.
And what about I guess, the fear factor? I know for myself, not being a climber, I feel a lot more naturally, well, I think it's a human thing to be naturally scared of heights. But do you think that everyone starts with that level of fear, or does that differ, do you think, from people?
Oh no, I think everyone has a natural fear of heights. I think it's a good thing to have a fear of that sort of thing because it
Mm,
makes you respect the places that you're going to. Rock climbing is definitely very much a head game. I mean, there's a physical side to it of being able to physically haul yourself up a cliff, but it's way more mental, having the confidence that yes, I can get up there, and oh yes, I can get up there, and if I do come off, I'm not going to hurt myself. So yeah, I find I have to be climbing pretty regularly to keep my head game in check. So yeah, it's certainly very psychological, and most climbers will tell you that it is.
I can imagine. So, what are some, I guess, coping strategies that you would use to, I guess, not let that fear take over?
It's sort of one of those things that once you actually start up a particular climb, it's quite easy to just get really focused just on the next move or the next bit of protection that you're going to place and things like that. It is almost like a Zen flow type scenario where all you're thinking about is the next move. You're really focused, really just in front of you. You're not thinking about anything else. There could be people down the bottom yabbering away, and all you're doing is concentrating on what is actually happening.
Mm.
Um, yeah, once you get into that state, it certainly really helps.
Yeah, I feel it with even dirt biking. I mean, it's like you can't think of anything else because if you do, you probably hurt yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah, it'd be very similar, yeah, to that.
And what do you think the biggest difference is between when you started to now, having all those years of experiences?
Well, certainly now I'd say it's a lot easier to get into rock climbing in that there's indoor climbing walls for starters. That's made a huge difference. There weren't really any of those when I first started. So what's happening now is there's people, they go into a relatively comfortable environment of an indoor climbing wall and they get really strong and very, very capable. So if those people then transfer that and get some knowledge about climbing outdoors, they do really well because they've got
Mm,
the skill which on the strength which gives them confidence. And then once they get the technical skill of how to actually look after them outside, they do really well.
mm.
So yeah, and there's certainly a lot of younger climbers coming through now who are setting incredible standards.
That's good that it's a lot more accessible then, or at least
Yeah,
the pathway to it is more accessible.
yeah, that's right. Because the other thing that's really taken off is called indoor bouldering, which is where you don't need ropes or anything at all. It's just purely based on the physical skill and
Mm.
balance and flexibility and things like that. So, and there's a lot of people now who go to the indoor bouldering walls and they never go outside. But you look at them climb and you think, gee, well, if you actually did go outside, you'd do really well.
Yeah, yeah. We've been to the Launceston Bouldering Centre,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I would say I definitely feel that level of fear because I'm so not used to, I guess it's like you got to trust your body that it can do it because more than likely, obviously not the really hard climbs, but going up that one extra little level, more than likely your body can do it, but it's your mind that seems to hold you back from sort of doing that little bit more reach.
Oh, yes, yeah, I find it quite nerve-wracking there because I don't like falling off the top. I think it's fair way up, and you could actually do an ankle or something. I tend to only
Mm.
choose something if I'm going to climb to the top. I want to be able to climb at least halfway back down before I jump off. But then, if you try and do something that's a bit harder and you get almost at the top and then you do fall off, then yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
make sure you land properly. So yeah, there's still an element of fear there for sure.
Yeah. And have you had any scary moments when rock climbing?
Oh yeah, I've had a few. Probably the scariest was climbing on a remote cliff. So we used to like walking into a remote cliff. You'd have your bushwalking gear plus your rock climbing gear. You'd walk in usually in the Cradle Mountain, Lake St Clair National Park, places like Mount Gerry, and the cliffs there are 350 metres high, so it's sort of all day to climb up them. We went in one day to climb on Mount Oakley, which is a mountain near Peelian Hut. So it's got these individual spires. So we climbed to the top of Mount Oak, or walked to the top of Mount Oakley, and then scrambled down and partly abseiled down to the bottom of these spires, and then started climbing them one at a time. So you climb the first spire, abseil off, climb the next spire, abseil off, and
What's
then
a
at one,
spire, sorry?
or a pillar of rock
A
that just
pillar.
sticks
Okay.
up. Yeah, big pillar of rock that sticks up in the air. So yeah, if you look at there's photos of Mount Oakley taken from Peelian Hut. If you look at it, just got this ragged line of spires that lead up to it.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, yeah, Mount Oakley. It's a pretty classic thing. No, I've been looking at it from years from the overland track. Thought it'd be good to, and we only really knew of one other party who'd done it, and so anyway, I think we'd done a couple of them, and I was heading up onto the third one, and because it's pretty remote mountain, there's a lot of loose rock, and I sort of climbed past this smaller pillar of rock, which I'd actually put a bit of my own protection around. Climbed up past it, put my foot on it, and it broke off, and
Oh,
so it was probably 200 kilo bit of rock that broke
wow.
off, and it was about to fall off, and my rope was attached to it. But amazingly, I managed to get my weight off it, and it came back, stood back in where it was, and then I took my rope off it and gave it another push, and off it went. But yeah, that nearly took me. That would have taken me, and that would have been it.
That's so scary.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's sort of put a bit of a dampener on the day. Then it's a heavy.
What did you do after that? Did you
Oh,
want to pack up?
well, yeah, we had to keep going, but yeah, we ended up. I think we missed the final spire. We decided, no, we're not going to do that, and got ourselves back to the top via a more easy way. And there was actually a group who'd been with Cradle Huts who'd been up there bushwalking, and they'd heard it all, and they were asking us what was going on
Wow.
down there.
Lucky, so lucky.
Very, very lucky.
But it's interesting because I have interviewed another rock climber, and I guess for someone who's not a rock climber, the perception is, it can be quite dangerous. But she's like, I actually think that dirt biking is more dangerous because there's so many uncontrolled things that could happen. Whereas, she talks about rock climbing being very calculated approach with your ropes and I guess the skills that you build and you don't just go and climb a wall without thinking about it. So yeah, it's very interesting, I guess, shifting that perception.
Yeah, well, generally it can be a bit more calculated, and you can slow it down in most situations. The analogy I used to do is whitewater kayaking, and that I found that scary because once you take off down a rapid, you can't just stop. You've just got
Yeah.
to go with it and adjust as you go. And a bit
Mm.
similar with mountain biking, like if you're getting to the point where you're doing big jumps and things like that, obviously once you've launched, you can't stop. You've got to either land it or not. And yeah,
Mm.
I haven't done any motorbiking. I've seen my boys motorbiking, and I
Yep.
can certainly understand how that can be pretty challenging.
Good though. Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And so how long have you been mountain biking for?
Again, started probably back in early years. Again, when for adventure racing or multi-sport races or whatever. There were a series of them in Tasmania. The first one was the Winter Challenge, which was based around Mount Field.
Hmm.
And then the second one was the Ben Lomond Descent, based around Ben Lomond. And in those days, they used to have a ski leg, mountain bike leg, run leg, and a kayak leg.
Wow.
The ski legs ended up getting abandoned because there wasn't enough snow. But yeah, that was when I first started mountain biking, to either as part of a team or doing solo, doing on those events. And then so really just dabbling in it. And then when my sons were younger, they were getting interested in biking, so we went along to the Launceston Mountain Bike Club when they were in the less than 10. I think they were probably only 8 and 10 or 10 and 12 or something like that. And they were entering the junior races, and I thought, oh well, I'll have a go. I'll enter the adult races. And
Hmm.
yeah, we did that for a long time, doing racing and things like that. And I've started doing more adventure racing and what have you.
Mm, yeah. And was it cross country mountain biking or the downhill? I know the boys probably do downhill now.
Yeah, no, initially it was cross country. So yeah, the club used to run twilight races one night a week, every week. And yeah, it was just cross country racing at various different places around Launceston. And that was really when most of the trails were just stuff that had been hand scratched into the bush, really. It was, and then during that time, that's when things started to develop with places like Derby and things like that getting on the map and starting to be built.
Mm,
And then it started to grow from there. Then the enduro side started to take off. So the boys were into cross country initially, and in fact they raced the national circuit for a while. Had sponsors and a coach
wow.
and team, and used to go to the mainland and race on the mainland, and had to train
Yeah,
on the
wow.
road a lot to get fit enough for all that sort of stuff, which were a bit thin, understandably, when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they ended up backing off from that a bit. But the skills they developed in their cross country then translated across to enduro and downhill really well. So they certainly went pretty well at that. Both of them competed in the Derby EWS, as it was called then, races when they first started to
Mm,
appear, and got on the podiums there.
awesome. Yeah, I haven't been riding with them, but I've seen a video and they're bloody good.
Yes, yeah, they're certainly very capable. We go to Medina, which is, you may have heard of, which is they drive
Yeah.
you to the top and you ride down. I ride with them, or they wait for me, and then at various points they say, "We're going to ride this track, Dad. You take that one. We'll see you down the bottom. Because if you come with us, you'll hurt yourself." And I think, yeah, that's right. So,
Yeah, but that's the good thing about mountain bike parks is, you can go with all different levels and they can do their thing and you can do your thing.
oh, exactly. Yeah, no, it works well.
And where would you say your favourite place to mountain bike is in Tassie?
Probably in Tassie, yeah, Derby's pretty hard to beat, I think, because I still have probably more a cross country philosophy. So I like riding up and down. So there I can just pull up in the car park, get off, get my bike out, and just go riding. I don't have to worry about whether there's a shuttle or not.
Yep.
Just go and enjoy myself, do a circuit with a mix of up and down, because I still like mountain biking from a fitness point of view. So I figure if I'm getting a shuttle, I'm not getting very fit. But yeah, the whole
Mm,
philosophy of mountain biking's changed these days. Most people think that mountain biking's all about shuttling. You don't go any unless you can get a shuttle, but I think there's a lot more
mm.
to it than that.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it's very, oh, I can't talk because I have an e-bike, so I won't ask your thoughts on an e-bike. But I used to have just a normal dual suspension mountain bike, and it was actually really good. And I was thinking, yeah, not long ago, I'd love to get a normal one because I do agree. I think it you just don't get as much fitness, and there is something pure about cycling up a hill and being like, yes, I did that, and then you get to go down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a bit like cross country skiing. You earn your turns. Yeah, so I think everyone.
So, do you have any advice for someone wanting to start in adventurous sports like hiking, mountain biking, or rock climbing?
Well, I think with anything, well, particularly bushwalking and mountain biking, join a club. Like that's the best thing. Like
Mm,
I couldn't recommend more highly for bushwalking than the Launceston Walking Club. And again, Launceston Mountain Bike Club, whether you're just doing introductory races, but they also do social rides and things like that. It's a good way to meet like-minded people and get out to different places. There isn't really a rock climbing club as such, but there used to be a fairly informal group that get together every Thursday night in the Cataract Gorge. That's where I used to go a fair bit, meet
mm,
like-minded people, and then we'd organise trips to other places. But these days, we're probably going to the indoor gym to get started and meet some people.
yep. No, I completely agree. That was the same for me with dirt biking. I joined the club, and honestly, I've never looked back because you meet like-minded people doing the same thing, and you also meet people who are more experienced than you that are more than willing to, I guess, help you along the way, and you just get immersed in that community, and I feel like you just, I don't know, becomes part of your life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good way to get started.
So I have three questions for you to finish off this podcast episode. So, what's the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, well, probably from any parts of life, whether it be business or personal. Ike Bain, who was Dick Smith's chief executive, I got to work with their company for a while. And I think it was his philosophy and Dick's philosophy as well. He said, as soon as you think of something, do it now. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. That's certainly very relevant to a lot of things.
I love that. Yes, that's very true, isn't it? Question number two, what's the worst piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I don't know if I've had anything that really stands out as bad advice. No, I think I'd have to pass on that one. I can't really think of anything on that.
That's probably a good thing. And question number three, if you were stuck out in the wilderness and could choose three things to have with you, what would they be?
Well, obviously, appropriate clothing and a tent and some food, I reckon.
Yep, amazing. So, what's next on the adventure list for you?
Yeah, mostly just focused on rock climbing these days. My wife Charlotte and I are planning to head to the mainland in late September for 4 weeks. We're going to Mount Arapiles, which is in Victoria. It's a bit of a rock climbing mecca in Victoria for a bit of a warm up. And then we're heading to the Flinders Ranges in South Australia to a place called Minari, which is more adventure, traditional climbing. We went there a couple of years ago and really enjoyed it, found it a bit intimidating, but this time we're going to go back being a bit better prepared so we can enjoy it more.
And better prepared, you mean how so?
Better mentally prepared, having done a lot more climbing beforehand and just being
Yep.
comfortable in the space. Yeah.
Yep.
The cliff there is about 100 metres high, and it's all adventure climbing, so you're placing your own gear, and there was only two
Yep.
other parties there the whole time we were there, so feeling very isolated. Yeah, so just being a lot more confident, so being comfortable in your own head, really.
Yep. All sounds very exciting. I hope you post some photos of them, of the experience.
Oh, yes, bound to, yep.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Wild Child Adventures podcast tonight. It's been awesome talking to you.
It's a pleasure. Always good talking about those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing.
Excellent.
Talk to you soon.